It's a great honor and pleasure to be here with Rabbi Rick Jacobs, who's the president of the Union for Reform Judaism, known as the URJ, which is the congregational arm of the Reform movement in North America, which represents an estimated 1.5 million Reform Jews in nearly 900 synagogues across the U.S. and Canada. Prior to that, he was the senior rabbi for nearly 2 decades, has been a warrior for social justice, and been on many boards and leadership positions. Thank you for taking this time out today.
It is a great honor to be here. Really, thank you. It's a cover.
Yeah. Maybe we can start with you just sharing with us who don't know what the URJ is and what it does.
Thank you. Well, the URJ, first of all, wasn't always called the URJ. It was founded in 1873 as the Union of American Hebrew Congregations by Isaac Mayer Wise, who really wanted to create institutions that would help shape Jewish life in America. We've grown over the years, expanded our footprint. We still have obviously these wonderful congregations that we think of as our partners in shaping more vital, more innovative ways in which Jewish life can thrive in this iteration. We also, in the early 1950s, we had the opportunity of going into Jewish camping. The president of the URJ then was Rabbi Maurice Eisendreth. So what are we going to do with camping? But now we have soon 18 overnight summer camps. We also are very involved in youth engagement throughout North America, deeply connected to Israel through that work. Social justice is at the heart of what we do. We have a religious action center in Washington, D.C., which raises the Jewish voice, not just in the issues of the moment, but really the deep bedrock upon which Jewish life must be built. And we're open to creating a vibrant, wider Jewish community. We see our role as a catalyst, a convener, and a source of strength.
Yeah. Wow, that's a lot. So by all accounts, you are bolstering and expanding the Reform movement to new heights, and it's just amazing to see it. How do you think about balancing denominationalism and the building of a movement with part of the other zeitgeist around post-denominationalism?
So I would think that, first of all, a denomination should never be some goal of ours to strengthen some organizational structures. But a movement is much bigger than a denomination. And I think that what we're involved in trying to do is to strengthen Jewish life, to bring people more closely to the core, whether it's through learning, through spiritual practice, through the practice of social justice. And I think what I love about the Reform movement is that we have some very, very strong and I think some very authentic commitments. I'd love for the whole Jewish world to be egalitarian. I would love for there to be a spirit of evolution and adaptation within ritual. So we see that we have something to share in Jewish life, but it's not an end. It's not at the end of the day, like how have we made our brand of Judaism stronger, but have we made the Jewish people stronger? Have we had an impact in the world around us? So I think that as long as a movement has a bigger aspiration, a bigger goal, Harez and Mishubach, it's noteworthy and it's praiseworthy. Yeah. But I see too often that becomes the end, and it never was meant to be that way. And the Jewish people will be weakened if we only think of ourselves as Reform or Conservative Orthodox or none of the above. How do I get an identity that's inclusive of the entirety of the Jewish tradition? At the same time, having a particular point of view and a particular depth of commitment, and I think that's what we see. And just as there was a ra'av ba'aretz, a famine in the land back in Genesis, I think there's a hunger today for a Judaism that is both serious and open and disciplined and passionate and joyful, and is open to change. That there's a respect for the depth of the tradition, but the tradition can never be held as it has been, I think, in some recent decades and centuries. So I think we have something unique to offer. It's not the only unique and powerful thing being brought to Jewish life, but that's what animates our movement, but it is not the end.
Yeah, beautifully stated. I imagine you'd say something similar for our roles as Jews and as global citizens. That we need the particularism and we need universalism. That we need to sort of be certain types of Jews, but also remember that we're part of a collective.
Absolutely.
And to never kind of lose ourselves in just one end of it, but to keep the dialectic alive. So to turn to the complexities of Israel, how do some of the policies of the state of Israel today alienate young Jews in America? And how do they empower young Jews in America? And where do you see that playing out more heavily?
I think the question is the question of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, we can debate whether the Obama administration did X or Y, or whether the Netanyahu administration did X or Y. But at the end of the day, I think what we see is a disconnect that is not imposed by any North American Jewish leader. It's the dissonance between the values that they know in their lives, they know in their hearts matter. For example, Tikkun Olam is not just a little thing I do on the side. It's how I shape a more just and compassionate world. Young people want to be able to bring those set of values to Israel, to their experience and their engagement with Israel. And when they see an Israel that is intolerant of Jewish diversity, I say that's not an Israel that respects me or that respects many others within the Jewish community. And when we see, for example, the rights of minorities or the questioning of a Jewish democratic state, these are really, really, deep struggles. And I think at the end of the day, I can love a government of Israel. I can disagree with anything and everything. How do I connect young people and their parents and grandparents beyond the headline, beyond the issue of the day? And there's always an issue of the day. You can just open up the newspaper. And I think that, it's harder for younger people to find that access to the thing that, there's a political argument. Is the Jewishness of the Jewish state articulated by Haredi political leaders? Is it expressed by the chief rabbis, or is it something that is growing and living? And when we bring young people to Israel, they fall in love. I'm sorry. Whatever complexities and whatever craziness, they fall in love with the absolute vibrancy of that Jewish society. And I think that that's powerful. And we see that whether it's a college student or a teen or someone younger. So how to make Israel, not just issues and not just political debates, but a fundamental part of being responsible for a klal, for a people, for a set of values. And to be able to ask young people, bring what you care about deeply. Don't ever leave that behind. And too many are asked in communal discussions here, for the sake of Israel, you have to be quiet. For the sake of Israel, you have to let go of your moral commitments. I just think that is not the recipe. And there are plenty of young Jews who actually care about Israel, but they care differently than maybe their parents or the way that some Jewish organizations care. We've got to be very, very thoughtful.
So is your sense, the general assessment, that young American Jews today are less likely to call themselves proud Zionists than a few decades ago? Not that we want to point blame, but is your sense that's more a part of decisions on the state of Israel's behalf, or upon sort of a failure of American Jewish institutions to cultivate that connection?
I think it's a both and. It'd be easy for me just to say that the Israeli government has inflicted that harm by not allowing an egalitarian pluralistic prayer space at the Kotel, or not allowing civil marriage, or more I think inclusive definitions of conversion and who is a Jew. At the end of the day, we every day wake up, we have a network of Israel education embedded in everything that we do. And I think we have to own some of that, and maybe a large part of it. And we partner with the Jewish Agency. We send shlichim every summer to our summer camps. I mean, hundreds of them. What's amazing, and this, I was thanked a while, somebody from the Jewish Agency said, you should say thank you for all those great shlichim that we send you as a foreign movement. I said, thank you. And they said, you better thank me. I said, well, wait a minute. We give you a gift and we're supposed to say thank you and we get to give you a gift. I said, no. A lot of those young Israelis come to our summer camps and they discover Shabbat. They discover Tefillah.
That's right.
And they go home more open and frankly seeking as a Jewish soul. So we actually have a lot to share. There's a two-way street here. And when we think about the Jewish people worldwide, the Israeli community experience has so much to teach and to inspire us. But here in North America, we've got a Jewish life that's also very alive. And we have things to also share and bring. And in that mutual strengthening, something much more powerful is likely to emerge.
So shifting gears to intellectual paradigm shifts. Jewish history, oversimplified, we moved from We moved from prophets to the priests. We moved from priests to the sages, from the temple to the Talmud, and we've constantly had a desire for evolution. And sometimes it happens radically from an external stimulus, or sometimes it happens internally from leadership. And I wonder, do you see a next paradigm shift on the horizon for Jewish intellectual, spiritual, cultural life? And what does that look like? And do you think we just sort of need to wait patiently for that to happen, or do you think we should be sort of agitating for that?
I think, paradigm shifts, I think sometimes happen, as you say,
Yeah.
because forces conspire
Yeah.
and just, push us in ways that maybe we're ready. I mean, the
Yeah.
destruction of the Second Temple.
Yeah.
There were a lot of forces that were already at work, but that actually caused that giant, shift. I think we're at a moment where the Jewish people is, particularly here in North America, we're out of our automatic pilot of, Jewishness is about, communal structures. It's about institutions, about buildings. It's about Israel and the Holocaust. There's actually something underneath all of that, and I think it's a Judaism of real essence. And I think people are hungry, and young people who grew up in any of the movements or outside of all the movements are looking for what's alive, what really speaks to me, what calls to me. And I think it requires us to not feel so invested in all the structures and bureaucracies of Jewish life. But I know I wouldn't be a rabbi. I wouldn't be involved in what I do every day if I had been called to do, first of all, my own deep Jewish exploration. And I think that, we have a lot of, sort of status quo and institutions that have always been there and, been doing what they do. And even the synagogue has never been just one thing. It's evolved, it's adapted. And I think one of the things I think is happening in this paradigm moment is we're seeing, more openness because, in the 1950s and 60s, everybody joined synagogues. Everybody sent their kid to Hebrew school. Even if you hated it, I hated it, you'll hate it.
Right.
And now it's only for those who choose
Right.
and those who find meaning, those who create meaning. And that, I think, is going to be a catalyst almost more than external forces to push us to have a Judaism that is, inspiring. I love when people say, talk about unaffiliated Jews. It makes me crazy. Why? Because the unaffiliated Jew, it's your fault. Why are you unaffiliated? You should be more responsible for the Jewish community. Like, what if we said these are uninspired Jews? Well, honestly, that's our responsibility. How do we make a Jewish community that is so inspiring, so exemplifying the most powerful values that we have? And then to, also let young people, I mean, we spend so much time in Jewish life worrying about why young people are not more like us.
Yeah.
Like, is that really our job?
Right.
Or to hand over the live embers of the tradition, say, help shape it into something that will be vibrant and authentic. So I think we're actually in the midst of some of that shifting. And some of it is happening because the institutions are not sustaining themselves just on their own momentum. I think that's actually a very positive force, and I don't feel pessimistic about what will emerge, but nor do I think I am clear, or anyone is clear, exactly where that process will lead.
So how can we balance that inclusivity and creativity with a sort of radical rootedness in mandate? Asked a different way, is there any desire for something like a halakha? Like I don't want to translate it as Jewish law. I normally translate halakha as progress and walking forward, right? But is there any desire, not in the traditional "these are the words of God at Sinai" sense, but in the sense of an existential sense that I feel from God or from conscience that I am mandated? Is there any desire in the movement to have these? I don't want to call them absolutes because that feels a little bit too strong, but a sort of formalized convictions in a sense.
I think any spiritual practice that's worth its weight has got to have both discipline and depth. And I think every relationship comes with obligation. I know this with my kids. My kids were younger, and my daughter was in a play. I said, "Abba, you gonna come to my play?" Like, are you kidding me? I was supposed to be somewhere else, but I'm going to change that. I'm going to be there.
Right.
Why? Because that relationship obligates me to be present, to be responsive.
Right.
My relationship with the Jewish people also obligates me.
Mm-hmm.
My relationship to God obligates me. But I don't think, I think this is where the Reform movement has had a machloket with, not necessarily the particulars of halakha, but the structure. And it's a little bit of a Martin Buber-esque critique, which is how can we always know what that response ought to take? That it always comes in this form, at this moment, in these actions.
Right.
But I do think there is
Professor
already...
Borovitz, I think, was pretty articulate about that.
Yeah, incredibly.
Yeah.
Allah Shalom. And he just left us, and he was my teacher. Yeah. I think that it's really key that autonomy is one of these things that I know we like to trot out all the time.
Right.
You don't want to violate one's personal autonomy, but every day my personal autonomy has to at times feel beholden to some larger communities that I'm a part of and some larger imperatives of my life. So I think within the Reform movement, we maybe once upon a time early in our evolution were allergic to anything that had that kind of discipline. Although some of the early reformers were unbelievably rigid about their practice, about their ideology, even their theology. I think we have more fluidity, but I don't think I would describe it as wanting to go to some new halachic structure. But I do think taking our obligations not only seriously, but to be disciplined about not just when I feel like X or Y, but even when I don't feel like X or Y. That to me is a religious life that we're called to practice. But I think always maintain that there's more variety within that is not only okay but frankly good.
Right. So do you see the divide between Reform and Orthodoxy widening, or are there avenues that are more optimistic of coming together? How do you see the relationship between those two poles?
I think in recent weeks,
I
think I've felt a lot of pain. And I think about even in Israel, the gap between ultra-Orthodox and pretty much everyone else, modern Orthodox, centrist Orthodox. So I think even within the Orthodoxies, there's a lot of challenge. And even here in North America, I mean, it may be too controversial to state, but probably among non-Orthodox Jews, 9 out of 10 voted for a different candidate. In the Orthodox community, it was quite, not the opposite, but it was dramatically different. I think we have to work as a Jewish community to make sure that we don't divide along Orthodox, non-Orthodox lines. And even when we've been fighting at the Western Wall for a part that we could share, I would fight to my death the right of the Haredi Jews to have the authentic place that allows them to live and practice. It's just, I think we have to figure out, and the teaching of machloket, that I honestly we can have a really serious debate with different Orthodox communities, but that we ultimately see ourselves as part of the same Am Yisrael, same Jewish people. I feel like that's potentially threatened and being lost, and that causes me enormous pain. And I think it will potentially reshape Jewish life in not good ways.
Right. Well, I'm in awe of the leadership that you're engaged with, and please follow the writings of Rabbi Rick Jacobs. Sign up for the e-blast of the URJ. Do you have e-blast?
We have all kinds of things, but can I make sure to say to people who will take the time to listen to this, you are an inspired Jewish leader, and what you do and how you express the core convictions, what it means to be a person of faith, a person of intellectual and spiritual depth, is frankly inspiring. And you can bring your teaching into any one of the different Jewish communities, and there's an authenticity about that. So I say, you take good care and keep sharing and keep teaching, because the Jewish world, our Jewish community, desperately needs
coming from
people
you. It's
like
a huge
you.
honor. Thank you so much. Thank you.